If you're into big SUVs and you like rap music, then there's probably no other car that's more synonymous to you than a Cadillac Escalade. This was a brilliant piece of marketing by General Motors. The first generation appeared in 1998, and it was basically a gussied up version of the existing Chevrolet Tahoe. That sat on the old GMT 400 platform, and it sold extremely well, despite the fact that it just looked like a Tahoe with some chrome on it. And once you got to the GMT 800, it was still very faithful to its Chevrolet and GMC roots, but it was a bit more unique. That was then replaced by the GMT 900, which was one of my favourites, and then the styling direction for the Cadillac variant really did start to diverge from its brethren. Then we got to the fourth generation, which is this was an all-new K2XX platform, and this carried over the look of the previous generation with these vertical headlights with a new number of LEDs mounted within them. It's a car that gets the imagination running wild. I'm Darren Walker, and this is Auto Atlantica. Now, the Escalade, like its Tahoe / Suburban and Yukon sisters, does come in two wheelbases. You've got this short wheelbase version, then you've got a longer, slightly longer wheelbase, but longer overall. So let's look at the trunk. You can open this in two ways. You can just open the rear glass like so. This is quite handy if you don't want the entire tailgate open and you just want to put things inside. And then you can open the whole thing. It's not a split like a Range Rover. It's just that you can open the rear glass or the entire hatchback. And as you can see, despite this being the short wheelbase car, and there is a third row in here, which is actually folded down right now, we can use these buttons actually to raise these up. With it being a premium version, you don't need to worry about such things. So we'll do that for the purposes of this video. And then you can also electronically retract those as well. But even with those up, with the long wheelbase version, you still have a monumental amount of boot space. But in this, you can still get things like tennis rackets in there, for instance. And then you have a little cubby underneath there. So whether you open the front or the rear doors, you are treated to an electronic retractable running board. Let's take a look in the back first of all, because this is what you are greeted with as a passenger. This one has captain's chairs in the back. You have a monumental amount of room and between those seats as well, so you've got extra luggage space there. And the rear seat passengers have their own climate control in the back. This is a third zone. In the back there, you can probably just make them out. There's a 12-volt socket, and there is also a standard 115-volt socket as well. Those rear seat passengers in this particular vehicle are treated to a DVD system, although that may be a Blu-ray. The two-tone leather, I think, is absolutely divine in this car. I would absolutely love this car to replace my truck, actually. It is beautiful. You have this real wood that's inlaid into the doors and also between the front seats. As you'd expect, you've got extra cameras for the perimeter camera system. And you've got perimeter central locking as well, so it just senses the key. You've got this lovely finish on these bezels for the electric seats, which sort of set it apart, and that's sort of mounted to this piano black base. The interior is quite something. These seats are just munificent, extremely comfortable, with the Cadillac logo just under the headrest there. And with it being a truck base, of course, you have this fantastic center console, and in this case it has a charging mat attached to it. So on the front doors you've got this same inlaid wood, that's real wood. You've got memory settings on the seats. Sadly, we've got standard GM switchgear for the electric windows, which is something that Cadillac is only now just getting away from. This second button here is for the four-wheel drive system. This doesn't have the same complicated four-wheel drive system as the Suburban does. In fact, until this generation, it just had a very generic all-wheel drive system instead. I'm not going to go into this system completely because there's just too much to talk about, but you've got a completely electronic display, which was quite nice back in 2015. So this tells you what the fuel range is, obviously your speedo, and you can change the look of this as well to basically suit your taste. It's got a full trip computer built in, and this particular one has, let's see if I can zoom in a bit so you can see that. There it is. This also has a head-up display as well, which you can configure to different types of information. This one's just got the speed and what the speed limit is, and that is connected to the satellite navigation. Center console, this is very much the older style, previous generation Cadillac switchgear that began with their CUE system in 2013. It's basically sort of like a touchpad affair for the heater controls, for the heated seats and cooled seats in this particular car. It looks tremendous, I think. However, Cadillac got rid of the system because it really doesn't function that well. These buttons up the top are a bit more tactile and harder feeling, and they just click on and off. You've obviously got parking sensors, for instance, and your lane control there, and you can also operate the glove box from there. It's electronically operated glove box. So I'll just show you that again. Yeah. So the passenger who's sitting there right in front of it has to lean over and push a button. It's more to go wrong, but it's a Cadillac. On this side, you can turn the traction control off. You've got adjustable pedals, rather like my Ram has. And then you've got various modes for the IntelliLink system. And this is the older style IntelliLink system. It was actually replaced in sort of 2019, 2020, but this is a 2020 and it still has it. The thing I love about big body on frame trucks like this is these wide center consoles, which my Shih Tzus actually love. And this one, you can, there we go. It's got hidden cup holders. And in the front here, you have a 12-volt socket accompanied by two USB-A's. And then in the middle here, you've got various spaces for phones and other knickknacks. Now, I am the complete antithesis of a rap star in practically every respect. Classical is more my gig. But I have such a soft spot for the Escalade. I've always wanted one in my collection. And I've thought about buying this very example, in fact. It is such a lovely specification. The Brembo brakes alone are worth it. They are just tremendous. Once you are in this car, you feel cosseted, you feel regal, you feel fantastic. It is a car that emotionally embraces you into a world of luxury. And it's one that I absolutely love. every aspect of the materials in here are just superb. I absolutely love this stitched dashboard up here that goes over the instrument cowling, and it's a real nice soft feel. That extends down to either side of the cup holders here, and I think, yeah, this actually slides all the way across, so you can use this just to hold phones or whatever. This wood is just real wood, actually, is absolutely wonderful. But when you put your foot down, that 6.2 litre V8 just comes into its own. Let's get underway. Column mounted shifter, and you've also got a built-in trailer brake here as well. You sit high up in these things like any truck, and it drives very much like a truck, to be honest, although they've made massive advancements. This one has air suspension, for instance, so it gives you that luxury ride. Now, although this particular generation on the K2XX platform, it actually looked smaller than the previous GMT 800s did, and that was because it had a slightly higher window line. That window line was constant all the way across the vehicle, and it just gave it a stance that made it look proportionally narrower, but it wasn't. In fact, the interior volume of this was larger than the outgoing GMT 900 model. Useless Auto Atlantica fact: the interior volume of that long wheelbase version was greater than an average single New York City hotel room. It's a very graceful ride. I mean, it's not a Rolls Royce, but you are heading towards those kind of standards, and this easily matches a Mercedes-Benz GLE, for instance. I think it's elegant, I think it's understated, and I think it's brutish. I absolutely adore this car, so much so that I want it so badly. There is just absolutely no wind noise. There is no noise that is penetrating this car whatsoever. It's done 76,000 miles, this car, and it sounds as good as new. If you wanted to set up your own local extortion ring, there isn't a better car for it. It doesn't matter what road surface you are riding along, and this road is fairly rough. It just soaks everything up. So we'll take it on a freeway here and give it a bit of welly, see how it performs. I'm not going to hoon it, but this would be the typical kind of motorway scenario. I think of the newer platforms, I've had several Suburbans myself. I had a GMT 400 back in the day, and then I had a later GMT 900 as well, which I adored. The problem with that generation, in fact all the generations prior to that, was rust, and the GMT 900 was no exception. And mine had some pretty endemic rust issues that were going to cost quite a lot of money to actually fix, which is why I replaced it with the Ram. I couldn't find a newer Suburban that I really liked at the time. This really doesn't feel that big. It certainly doesn't feel as big as my Ram does, and it is about the same width, but it is considerably shorter than my truck, and that's what appeals to me. It just makes it easier to handle, it makes it easier to park. It just feels squatter and more compact, but it still hauls everything that you need it to. If you have that, the biggest difference, of course, is if you have that third row up, then you've got very little trunk space, which is why if you are going on a big road trip with a family in tow, then you really want the ESV version or the longer version of this thing. or a Suburban if you don't want something that's as expensive to run, because the Suburbans also use the 5.3 litre Ecotec as well, which you can run on non-premium fuels. The 6.2 requires premium. So you can imagine being in this on a road trip, as we're doing now, on a road like this. If you were stuck on Interstate 80, for instance, through Minnesota and South Dakota, it is like this, just straight as a die, for about 12 hours. And if you are in this, as boring as the scenery can get, you're never bored of driving this. It is just like being in an armchair, and you can get out of this car after that kind of drive and feel just as refreshed as you were when you got into it. I absolutely adore this car. I really do. I've got a real soft spot for this particular car. I love the specification on it. As I've said, this particular car has about $10,000 worth of options, most of which goes into those Brembo brakes. That's about $6,000 of it. What are the downsides to this? Well, there is only one for me, and that is this older style Cadillac functionality for everything from the heated seats to the infotainment system to the ventilation system. They require some work because sometimes you have to press these buttons 2 or 3 times to get what you want. They don't feel very tactile. And Cadillac has replaced that system since with one which looks similar, but they function so much better. So the question is, would I want this car? Hell yes. I want this car in spades. I want this car so badly that I would marry it. It is absolutely sensational in every respect. Sure, it's 4 years old now, and the tech is starting to show its age, but that doesn't matter. I just love the way that this car drives and how it rides. I love the way that it cossets you. I love the luxury. The seats are just amazing. I love the real wood, the leather, just the details are just fantastic. And you're going to feel like a rap star, whether you want to or not. Right, so there we have it. That is my brief review of this 2020 Cadillac Escalade Premium Luxury. The mouthful that is. Just look at it. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Darren, and this is Auto Atlantica.